Welcome, everyone. It's 1 o'clock now. My name is Jenny Parks, and you have logged into the webinar called Textbook Affordability, OER, and Other Approaches. It's one of a series of OER-related webinars that we're doing at MHEC this year in conjunction with our OER initiative. Like I said, my name is Jenny Parks. I'm the Director of Academic Leadership Initiatives at the Midwestern Higher Education Compact. And this year and next, I am working on helping our institutions in the Midwest implement more OER programs and adopt more open educational resources. Today's webinar will follow this agenda. I'll do some introductions and thank yous. I'll let you know about the purposes of the webinar. I'll do some introductory comments about copyright and affordability. And then we will have guest speakers whom I will introduce at each section, framing the need for affordability initiatives, talking about state-level affordability initiatives, and then we'll have two different presenters share with us their institutional level affordability initiatives, one in the context of a state program and one that is individual to the institution. And then we'll have 10 minutes at the end where you can ask questions. You can also, of course, always ask questions via the chat box, and we'll try to take care of those as we're going, or you can save them to chat at the end, and we will answer verbally at that time. So let's get started. I decided to pull together folks and content for this webinar for a couple of reasons. The first one is to address some of the confusion about various approaches to dealing with the high cost of textbooks and learning materials. Since I do work with an OER initiative, that tends to be the type of affordability response that I am most familiar with. But there are a number of other responses, and they're confusing. So I created this little infographic here to show you many of the terms that are out there that really confuse people. And I encountered a lot of this confusion when I would have conversations with legislators during the spring as we were discussing OER and other affordability measures. So I think it's important to make sure that people have a way to talk about these things amongst themselves, with their leadership, and again, possibly with legislators. The terms that I used here are not all of them that are out there, but they are adapted from a paper on the MHEC website, which I will refer you to in a little while, from Jaggers, Rivera, and Akani just this year that explores different affordability options. Another reason that I decided to do this webinar was just to place OER in the context of all the other affordability materials. It's important not just to know that there is a spectrum, but also to know some of the important differences about them. Once again, I'm a visual learner, so I created a little graphic here. We're really talking about everything from, well, the traditional textbooks we know are not affordable, everything in between all the way to OER, which are fully open and free, are what are encompassed when we talk about affordability initiatives. Before I do that, it's not just affordability we need to make sure we talk about too, because copyright is an important component of these initiatives. I looked for a really brief open definition of copyright for you, and it basically is the laws that give the owner of a work the right to say how other people can use it. And it makes it easier for authors to make money by selling their work and to pursue them civilly and sometimes criminally if they have not been properly, if there are not proper attributions and payment. That's a really important thing to understand. The 6 basic elements of legal copyright in the U.S. are reproduction, the production of a derivative work, the public performance of a work, public distribution, display, and performance, including digital transmission. So it's a little bit different than the other. And these are all important in the context of affordability initiatives because different affordability responses aren't just the type of resource and the cost of them, but also how they can be used. Those are really important pieces to understand as being different. When we talk about affordability initiatives, it can be any set of strategies, plans, organizations, or groups of people working to address college affordability, specific specifically usually in the context of the high cost of textbooks and learning materials. And it can be as much as a statewide program all the way down to one course. We have some proposed laws at the national level, and there are a number of states that have affordability initiatives. There are also whole conferences where it's all they deal with. The Textbook Affordability Conference was just in Minneapolis this past April. And then there are a lot of non-legislative state initiatives, and I've referenced in our materials a report by ECS that does a good job of giving you the range of those. Another really good resource is the recent report that was published on the MHEC website, which is called College Textbook Affordability, Landscape, Evidence, and Policy Directions. That also is a great place to take a look and again, see the range of options, who's doing what, and what are the important implications there. So with that in mind, I am going to turn this over to our first guest speaker. It is Marcos Rivera. He's a postdoctoral researcher at the Ohio State University. His title is Research and Program Assessment Office of Student Academic Success. And Marcos is one of the co-authors of the paper I just referenced. So Marcos, please give us some background on the need for affordability efforts and how they can be framed.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. Thanks for the introduction. Everyone, thank you for joining us. And so, as Jenny was mentioning, there are many options when talking about textbook and teaching materials. There's differences in delivery, cost, use restrictions, and it creates this landscape that can be complicated to define and discuss. And so, in our brief, there we go, we sought to really define some of these options to help bring some clarity to the conversation and really find a way to compare the options on similar grounding. So we use the figure you see here to map the options on the axis of cost to students and use restrictions. And so when we talk about cost to students, we're talking about the vast variation in what students pay for textbook and materials. These can range from $0, where students do not have to pay anything for a text or materials needed for class, to literally hundreds of dollars, especially when you add access codes that organizations like Student Pergs have found to average around $100 per code per class for some students. And so when discussing these use restrictions, we're also considering the spectrum of open access or open source materials to, on the other end, proprietary copyrighted materials. And so I'll briefly talk about commercial printed text, inclusive access, and OER as three of the main points that we talk about in the graph, in the brief, but also that I know my colleagues will likely be mentioning as part of their affordability initiatives. And so first up is the commercial printed text. They're high cost and have high use restrictions. Faculty may not use the whole textbook or might skip chapters or may list it as required but end up not using it in the course at all. You often have a have what you have kind of mentality with the commercially printed textbook, leaving instructors assigning multiple texts or readings to supplement the already costly commercial textbooks. And so ancillary materials, or these additional materials used in teaching, such as PowerPoints, videos, homework assignments, or exams, are really valuable for instructors, especially in those larger courses. But students often must purchase an access code to do something as simple as completing their homework through one of these systems, which is one of the challenges with the traditional texts. Moving to inclusive access, which is also a publisher type model, they're also called day one models, or they may have institutional naming conventions. For example, Indiana University calls their program eText. Here at Ohio State University, we'll be launching something called Carmen Books, which is an inclusive access approach. And so inclusive access models, or IA models, as I'll talk about them, are contractual agreements designating an eText for the entire class to ensure enrolled students have access to the text on the first day of the course. By essentially guaranteeing this large volume of commitments in the course, publishers offer discounts on the text. Federal regulations actually allow universities to place the cost of textbooks on students' tuition and fees, as long as the costs are, quote unquote, below competitive market rates. And so this distinction is not clearly defined in the legislation, which is something that people are starting to ask questions of, and I know we are starting to look at here. There are potential concerns with IA models in that they are fairly new, so not much rigorous research has been done on them. Some usage may end at the end of the semester, limiting reference to the materials, and then the exclusivity of the contracts might limit competition for other opportunities around campus. There's also a potential for price hikes once classes are participating in the model. And so we have these additional questions that we're starting to look at here at OSU that folks should also start be thinking about as well when you're talking about inclusive access models. Lastly, OER are open education resources. I'll be brief with OER since I know some of my colleagues on the call will be going more in depth on their initiatives that include OER. But OER are free or reduced cost materials that are openly licensed. They can be in a variety of forms, but are primarily digital texts. Some are chapter-based, others are a collection of materials curated from open sources. They may be written by one instructor or a group of instructors, like the Ohio initiative is that we'll chat about. But overall, OER can really do some things to save students money and can be aligned to instructors' teaching motivations and goals. We actually have another paper about associating OER with motivation and goals. But really, bringing it back and reframing it in the context of this webinar, when primarily talking about these materials, my colleagues will be addressing the affordability aspect of materials alternative to these traditional texts. The reason being is that costs on traditional texts have increased exponentially over the last decade. You see this figure here. We use data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics to make this figure that shows that the increase of all college expenses, but especially textbook prices over the past 12 years has significantly increased. And so we're looking at an increase of about 190% from January 2006 to January 2018 when we pulled the data. And so states and institutions across the country are addressing textbook affordability concerns with initiatives seeking to and accomplishing in saving students millions of dollars a year across the country. You see a couple of the dips within this, the end of this figure. There's no research out there in what contributes to those dips, but a lot of conversation is going on based on affordability initiatives really attributing to some of the reduction in cost for students that my colleagues will now chat about.
Thank you, Marcos. This is Jenny. Some of those colleagues to whom Marcos referred are Gwen Evans, the Executive Director of OhioLINK, and Anna Bendo, the Director of Affordable Learning Initiative at OhioLINK. These two ladies are going to talk to you about OhioLINK and the state-level organization of affordability efforts in Ohio. All right, ladies.
Hi, so you recognize our voices. I'm Gwen Evans, Executive Director of OhioLINK, which is the library consortium in Ohio that organizes or supports the activities and initiatives that comprise affordable learning in Ohio.
And I'm Anna Bendo, and I am working with Gwen on a lot of our different affordable learning initiatives. So all of the things that Marcos referenced in the slides were about before, all of our efforts to try to help with the cost of course materials for students.
So just a brief overview, you see on the slides, we are a state agency under the Ohio Department of Higher Education, but we're also a membership organization that has a very long history of sharing and collaboration. And you see our service populations up there. We cover the public research universities, two-year and regional colleges, and most private independent colleges and universities in Ohio, and we impact about 800,000 student head count annually. So how does it all fit together? OhioLINK, we have a variety of initiatives, and how we interact changes. We can be the driver or organizer, as we are with our Open Textbook Network membership. We can be the support service, as we are with the Ohio Open Ed Collaborative, or we can be the communicator and promoter of opportunities, as we are with our inclusive access program, where we negotiated statewide prices for inclusive access. Anna, do you want to talk about a bit about the Open Ed Collaborative?
Sure. So the Ohio Department of Higher Ed was giving out some innovation grants a couple of years ago and awarded $1.3 million to a group of 18 mostly two-year colleges in the state, but also Ohio State University and Ohio Dominican University, to try to create open course content packages for high enrollment courses in the state. And so OhioLINK is working in a supportive role for this group, helping with things like a repository to put all of the materials and helping with the steering committee as well and the direction of the program. But overall, the Ohio Open Ed Collaborative group began their work about 2 years ago now, and we had 3 different cohorts of faculty members compiling or curating open course content for these high enrollment courses. And so we're wrapping up cohort 3 by the end of the summer is the goal. And so there'll be 22 open course content packages available on our OER Commons microsite, which I'll talk about in a little bit, that are available for the people of Ohio to use as well as beyond that because it's on an OER Commons site. So we used faculty teams from Ohio institutions, 2-year, 4-year, private, across the spectrum. We also had librarians from OhioLINK libraries, and we had some reviewers as well on those teams who are also Ohio faculty that were helping to ensure that content aligned with our transfer assurance guidelines. So we're looking forward to having this content available and working on our adoption strategies currently.
So can you advance the slide? So that's one initiative where we're in a supporting role. It is being driven by the 17 institutions that are engaged in that grant. So now I'm going to talk about what we call the classic approach to affordability. And I just had a doctor's appointment, and the woman who is registering, they always ask, what do you do? And I say, I'm the head of OhioLINK. Have you heard of it? And she said, oh my God, I got all my college textbooks from OhioLINK. I love you. And this is a news story I've heard, that she used to go to the college bookstore and do her homework in the bookstore and just put the books back on the shelf because she couldn't afford the nursing text. So when she says, I love OhioLINK, she's talking about our classic approach to affordability. So it's the shared library materials, which translates, of course, to zero cost to the end user. And our students and faculty use these shared resources a lot. In fact, they interact with our resources every 1.2 seconds. And on each campus, there are dedicated librarians that will help these students, distance students, and faculty find and use these resources, either if they've already been assigned or if the faculty are looking for some available resources. So for print, books from our 118 libraries can be sent to any OhioLINK library for pickup within 2 days. The downside is print is being used less and less. Even if students tell you they like print more, they use it less, and they increasingly expect book delivery to behave like Amazon. Our speed is pretty good at 2.5 days, but our tracking is primitive at best. For ebooks and e-resources, we get libraries better pricing and contract terms that then they can obtain individually. However, 90 institutions have to agree to that shared package of content, from Eastern Gateway Community College to the Ohio State University. And the downside to ebooks is licensing. It's often very restrictive. Sometimes we can't afford to get unlimited use ebooks that would work for class assignments. Our biggest leap outside traditional library activity is with our statewide negotiated price agreements with 6 of the major textbook publishers, establishing lower prices for digital textbooks in the inclusive access model. There are more details on the blog, links at the address URL you see here, but I'll speak briefly to the pros and cons of this approach from our point of view. Pros are these publishers account for 85% of the textbook market and therefore have the most impact on student textbook costs. Inclusive access gives institutions the opportunity to deliver cost savings to their students quickly and at scale, and it protects faculty academic freedom regarding course content. so faculty can continue to use what they're already assigning. It delivers savings in both general education and high enrollment courses, but also in specialized and upper division courses. If there are no appropriate OER materials available for a particular discipline or course, students still get lower prices than they would pay otherwise. Implementation happens on individual campuses at their own speed and preference, and can happen while still pursuing OER initiatives and other affordability strategies. The cons are, as OhioLINK doing the negotiating, we have little traditional negotiating leverage on price because we aren't actually buying content. We've relied on our communication and marketing ability at the statewide level to keep prices low and publishers competitive with each other. Tracking our prices against actual market prices is difficult, and we're actually using a product called Verba Connect to simulate being a college bookstore. We load our OhioLINK prices into Verba Connect and check them against used prices on the open market, full price print, the rental strategy. So that's a way for us to check whether our prices remain competitive over time. We're getting market intel in that way. Aggregate textbook adoption data across the state to identify salient titles that we might negotiate for a ebook deal. It's hard to get across multiple institutions, and students may pay a lower price in inclusive access, but they still pay compared to OER. The biggest frustrations for us have been bookstores. They have an outsized influence because institutional contracts are highly variable, and we can't and don't want to control retail markup. Bookstore managers have ranged from really helpful and enthusiastic to being actively obstructive. Inclusive access involves multiple departments on campus to implement, and getting everyone on the same page takes time. Confusions were ample and pretty awkward, and you can email us if you want to hear more about it. We are amid the next round of pricing negotiations with publishers, and our goal was to make inclusive access easier to employ for our member institutions that wanted to engage in it, and we have accomplished that. Next, Anna's going to talk about additional components to Affordable Learning Ohio.
Okay, thanks, Gwen. So I mentioned earlier the Ohio Open Ed Collaborative, which we have. It's a large group. It's a statewide initiative, but one of the pieces that OhioLINK has spent a lot of time working on and putting some of our time and resources into is the repository side of it, so where all of these materials will be housed. And we actually worked with OER Commons to create our own OER Commons microsite where these materials will be located and people can find them. So right now, most of the content on this site, which the link is right there, is dedicated to the materials that have been collated for the grant. But the goal is that long-term, OhioLINK faculty members will be able to submit their own OER resources to the site and create groups together and work on revising and getting their materials out there. One of the smaller projects that we're working on this site is a hub for one particular college who has a smaller grant program going on. Columbus State Community College has some faculty members who are working on OER materials for some of their higher enrollment courses, and we've created a small hub on our site so that they can put their materials there and other people will have access to them. Another one of our affordable learning initiatives that we were really proud of and feel like made quite a big difference in the state was this group of affordable learning ambassadors. So Gwen mentioned earlier that we are a consortial member of the Open Textbook Network, and shout out to Sarah Cohen, who is on this call. If anyone has more questions about how to become part of the Open Textbook Network, she would be more than happy to answer them for you. But this group of folks was all trained at their summer institute and came back to Ohio and really willingly delivered workshops throughout the state for about 2 years on different affordable learning initiatives with a focus on how to get your faculty interested or taking a look at OER as an option. And this group of people really ranged from librarians at individual institutions to faculty members to instructional designers So we had a lot of expertise. We had someone who was had a great background in copyright and was more than willing and happy to talk about it wherever she went. So we were able to direct copyright questions to her. That's Carla Myers there. And so this group really, I felt like, built a groundswell of support for these initiatives throughout the state and are still giving workshops even now. And to date, we've given, I believe, let me look at my numbers here, 31, hold on, let me find it. Sorry, I don't have my papers ready. There we go. Okay, to date we've given 31 workshops on affordable learning, and they've also presented at regional and national conferences. And we provided the administrative funding and support for them, but they actually did the work of getting out there and presenting. We also, as a group, OhioLINK and the University of Akron co-sponsored an Affordable Learning Summit last year, where we had a lot of the folks who were starting OER and affordable learning programs on their campus come and learn more about how to get that going. We're actually doing our second annual Affordable Learning Summit at the beginning of August, where we are spending one day talking about OER and library resources and another day talking about inclusive access, kind of getting the word out about some of our initiatives and really trying to get them to move to the next step. So we've done a lot of these introductory workshops, kind of let's talk to you about affordable learning initiatives, and now we really want people to take those next steps to get a program started and established on their campus. So we're excited that things have kind of moved from the introduction level to the implementation level.
So to learn more, there's a lot more we run an affordable learning website at that URL, and you can sign up there for information and alerts. You can learn about each statewide initiative in more detail, and you can also, there's a section to see what is happening on individual campuses also. And so how did we, just brief, how did we get started? This is our sort of recap of what you might keep in mind if you're interested in a comparable statewide initiative is academic freedom is paramount to faculty. Giving them the widest variety of affordability options is the most scalable and fastest way to lower costs for students while working on longer term initiatives, what we call sort of slow food. OER integration is curriculum reform. It's time intensive and faculty need help, not just content. Institutions vary in their ability to provide that support, whether that support be instructional designers, librarians, release time, grants, etc. So knowing up front how you can support faculty in the use of OER is really important. Librarians are natural leaders in this area. I know several MHEC states have library consortia that are already engaged or interested in these activities, including Paulney in Indiana, Mobius in Missouri, Minitex in Minnesota, MCLS in Michigan, and we all talk to each other. So seek them out to ask questions and offer support. And here are a few easily accessible initial steps that you can take. Identify the widest communication network at your disposal. For us, it's a library consortium. If you don't have one, what other network has expertise and reach that you can use as a communication vector? Quality Matters is one potential network that it sort of intersects with the Affordable Learning Ambassadors. What others do you have in your state? Where do you have people in higher education gathering in your state? Disciplinary regional conferences, other events? Go there and network and present. And also, like our statewide Affordable Learning Ambassadors, you will need champions. You need designated leaders to bring it all together, and they need support in terms of time, logistics, and funding. And lastly, I'll say it again, look to your librarians. They provide a built-in network, are experienced in working with faculty on curricular matters, and are eager to serve. Make them part of the conversation from the start, and trust me, you won't regret it.
So here's our contact info if you want to send us any emails or questions, as well as our website for more information. So thank you. We'll turn it back to you, Jenny.
Thank you, ladies. Wow, I learned a lot more than I knew already about OhioLINK. That was great. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to our next guest speaker, who's also from Ohio. Please welcome Kelly Broughton. She's the Assistant Dean for Research and Education Services at the University Library at Ohio University. She's also the Director of Non-Academic Operations and Strategy, Finance, and Administration. And very appropriate. You were just saying how great librarians are. So, Kelly, please tell us what you're doing at Ohio University.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks for that intro and for inviting me to share our experience here. And just to contextualize a little bit about our local efforts, for those of you who might be unfamiliar with Ohio University, we're a research university with over 2,600 students, 26,000 students and 200 faculty across 10 locations and, of course, online. We offer about 250 undergraduate majors, 190 master's programs, and over 40 doctoral programs. And as Jenny said, I'm a librarian, and as Gwen quite effectively communicated, libraries have been in the business of helping students save money on course materials for a very long time. But what I want to talk a little bit about today is our contemporary efforts at Ohio University, most recently with textbook affordability. So we began a few years ago with a task force that included stakeholders from all areas of campus: the library, instructional innovation, IT, the registrar, faculty senate, student senate, and auxiliaries. So this task force examined a variety of ways to both expand access to course materials and reduce costs to students. And I'm going to quickly run through a handful of our most successful approaches. The first two bullets on this slide are library-led initiatives. Through our alt textbook program, we leverage the training and resources provided through our membership in the Open Textbook Network and elsewhere to deliver workshops to our faculty on OER, copyright, Creative Commons licensing, and exploration of course engagement technologies. We also incentivize faculty to review open textbooks in the Open Textbook Library to facilitate adoption of OER. We've customized the delivery of these workshops to specific colleges and departments, working along with instructional technologists to provide hands-on support to help faculty adopt OER and integrate library licensed content into their courses. These workshops have yielded over $400,000 in direct savings to students. Our Syllabus Streamline program is simply a rebranding of work that librarians already do, and that is review reading lists and course syllabi with an eye toward leveraging our own dollars and making sure that instructors are providing students with seamless links to our electronic content, that we are managing our rights agreements with publishers most effectively, and that when possible we have tangible copies of books and media available to students in the library. And thanks to OhioLINK's negotiations with textbook publishers, we've also launched an inclusive access program on our campus and now have dozens of courses where students get deep discounts on electronic texts and have those materials available on the first day of class. Our university has also launched a collaboration with Top Hat. And Top Hat is a commercial course engagement platform that allows instructors to deliver course materials and assessments and take attendance and more inside an online environment. So we invested in a university-wide license to Top Hat and incentivized our faculty to redesign their courses and use the Top Hat platform to either deliver OER or their own course materials at no cost to students. And the incentives for this included both instructional design and instructional technologist support, as well as cash incentives for the faculty. And this has resulted in over $1 million in savings to students. The libraries we're also engaged in early stages in examining how our university can best support local faculty creation of OER. So we're currently working with a select group of faculty on an eclectic group of projects. We have one faculty member who uses open pedagogy and has students creating her own her course content. That content needs edited and packaged, and we are supporting those efforts. We have another faculty member who has selected an open textbook for her course but needs help building and maintaining a related question bank of quizzes and test materials. So our hope is that after a few cohorts of projects like these, we can make some broad and impactful recommendations to our university about how to sustainably support faculty creation of OER. The last effort I'd like to mention that came from our textbook initiatives our textbook task force is a student-driven initiative. So our initial student senators on the task force created a used book exchange program, cutting out the commercial textbook resellers in our area This lasted for a couple semesters on our main campus. Recently, this initiative has faded out without a champion in Student Senate to volunteer or manage the effort. So over the past few years, the task force has engaged in many discussions about where to put our efforts, and while we haven't always agreed and we haven't always achieved success, because we had such wide representation on our task force, I believe that the ideas have quickly spread across campus. We've got a lot of interest, and there's certainly a much greater awareness of the impact of expensive textbooks on the lives of our students. So just to quickly wrap up, I would like to offer a few of the lessons we've learned over the past couple of years here at Ohio University. And first, and maybe most important, is that people need choice. Instructors need to have options so that what they assign truly meets their learning objectives. And also, no matter how great a deal we manage to negotiate for our students in pricing, there are legitimate reasons why students need to be able to opt out. A student may need a hard copy because of an accessibility issue or because they don't have reliable internet or computing at home, and they need to be able to use their own money in the way that best helps them. And so I think you've already probably received this message from the other presenters, but any change in required course materials should accompany a thoughtful course redesign, and that takes effort and time. So rarely, if ever, can you simply substitute one textbook for another one that is cheaper without considering how you are delivering your course content. Faculty, I think, typically appreciate that as individuals, they can make a real impact on their students' wallets in this area, unlike tuition and fees. And so I think they're naturally inclined to want to learn more about how to do that, but they're constantly managing competing demands for their time, which is where incentives may be able to help put this work on the top of their desk. But I do want to point out that managing incentive programs also takes effort. Someone needs to provide oversight so that the incentive funds are most effectively leveraged and the returns are measured. So in closing, there are many, many efforts that can be made, and all of them, big and small, can have impact. Working together makes things go faster. Without the task force here on campus, without Open Textbook Network, without OhioLINK, and the interest in this issue at the Ohio Department of Higher Ed, we would not be where we are at Ohio University. And I think, Bob, the next speaker will give you a really good sense of the variety of stakeholders and methods that are available to you. So thanks for your attention. Feel free to reach out to me at any time and ask questions at the end of the webinar. And I'll hand it back to Jenny.
Thank you, Kelly. That was wonderful information. We are going to move on now to a different type of institutional effort, one that is not kind of embedded in and is linked to other efforts in the state. We have Bob Butterfield here, the Assistant Library Director for Library Access, Materials Management, and Procurement at the University of Wisconsin-Stout, Wisconsin Polytechnic University. Bob?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for letting me share with you today a little bit about what we do in the realm of affordability at the University of Wisconsin-Stout. We've had some form of affordability program for over 120 years, and it started out as a traditional print rental system, and it's morphed into being a provider of a large variety of types and formats of content, and it provides about 98% of all the curricular content that our students and faculty need in their courses. To give you an idea of where I come from, I want to give you an idea of the kind of the definition that we work under. I hate using the word textbooks, but I will say providing textbooks and other curricular content or material at a reduced or no cost. We want to promote student success and access. And we also want to make sure that we understand that affordability has financial, academic, and social justice implications. We do provide the vast majority of content for our students, and we are always advocating for them in the realm of not only affordability, but also just basically in success, because that's what our entire program is rooted in. So our program, it kind of looks like this. We are a university department. We are 100% student fee funded, and we provide about 98% 8% of the course materials for our students, and that includes print books, ebooks, access codes, many other things. Our students pay for the 2021 school year, they're going to pay about $15 a credit for undergraduate students and about $20.50 for graduate students. And we are going to provide every piece of content that we possibly can for those students. We've had some success over the years, and we were able to give the students a 12.5% decrease going into next year, and we're looking at another 12.5% decrease going into the year after that. We are specifically developed, and our entire effort is to advocate for students in the realm of curricular content. I'm answerable to the students. Any fee increases, decreases, anything like that, I have to have approved by the Student Senate. And I also several times a year coordinate with them so that we remain completely transparent in what we're doing with their money. And I always encourage my staff to spend every dollar that we collect from our students like it's coming from our pockets. I am assistant library director, but I'm not a librarian. I have a long history in retail sales and things like that, but I do not work for a store. So it gives us a little different view or twist on what we're doing for our students. And really the entire goal of our program is to find affordability wherever it lives. And this requires us to be very entrepreneurial as we're doing this for our students, as we're trying to provide them as much content as we possibly can for the lowest possible price. So we kind of look at it in the view of an affordability triangle. Everything that we do, every effort is geared towards student success and also to mitigate cost. And we do that through the traditional print rental system, through the incorporation of open educational resources. And partnerships, I want you to read that as all other things. And this can include anything from negotiated vendor agreements, using bulk purchases, maximizing the use of free shipping, anything that we can do to mitigate price and keep a sustained low price point for our students. We even take withdrawn books. We bid those out to the secondary market, and any revenue that we generate through those sales goes back into purchasing content for our students. The value to our campus at large is not about creating a margin or not being a revenue generator for the campus. What our purpose for the campus is it's about providing a tool for recruitment, retention, and for student success. And that's how we pay our way to the campus at large with the money that we collect from our students. These are the broad services that we offer. We still have the traditional textbook, which includes print textbooks and course packs, those kinds of things. We have our digital resources program where we provide e-texts, access codes, and other digital forms of content that are used for curricular purposes. There's a lot of different types of things that we do in that area. The OER program, and recently a new twist is we've actually merged with the Library Collection Development Department so that we can provide both our faculty and students a one-stop shop for curricular content. So as we're asking what textbooks can we provide for your class, we're also saying what streaming video or what scholarly articles that do you need access to so that your students can succeed in your class. In a more finer view, pardon me, I skipped a slide here. These are some of the individual services that we offer to both our faculty and students. We work for the students, but our philosophy is that we know how important it is to take care of faculty. Taking care of faculty takes care of students. They are the subject matter experts, and we try to find a way to say yes instead of no, trying to encourage them to pick the best tools for their courses, and let us go out and worry about the financial aspects of acquiring those and providing them to the students. But we can't operate in a vacuum, and I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes to show kind of the intricacy of the level that we work with in developing a team to make our program a success. The first level of this team is, of course, our consumers. These are the students and faculty, and we can't do anything without them. They are the reason that we are here. So it is critical that we make sure that their needs are met. They also help us to really retain the value of our program and to remain relevant. We change with the needs of our consumers, and we need to continue to do so that we do remain relevant to our campus. The next group I wanted to touch on is the conduits, and you've heard a little bit about this before. You've heard the great work that libraries do, but I'd also mention bookstores too. Both of these organizations have a broad access to the consumers that we discussed earlier. Both of these also have a very strong stake in the success of students on your campus. Neither one can exist without the faculty and students, so both are very important to bring in as conduits to the affordability question and program, so that you can use them as a means to provide labor in some areas, to provide communication, to be a part of the group that makes the decisions and helps come up with ideas. And they are so critical to having the access and in providing success to the consumers. We also want to touch on the supporters. These folks, often unsung heroes: disability services, learning technology, instructional designers, your centers for teaching and learning. These are the folks who are going to make the content that you use more effective in the classroom. It's about more than just providing a book or a piece of content. It's about using that to its ultimate value, and these are the folks that are going to help you to do that. So definitely need to be part of that team and the thought process as you're developing your program. Next are your propagators, and these are the folks who are going to help you with the two-way communication. They're going to provide you good feedback so that you can improve the program, so that you know what's going right, and are very good avenues of making sure that the communication is going to all levels. Sometimes it's very difficult when you have 1,000, 1,500 or more faculty. We have about 9,500 students here at Stout, but getting the information out to everyone is sometimes very, very challenging, and these are the folks that we really rely on to help get that word out and make sure that no one is cut out of the picture. Also, there's a group of tangential folks who are really important to this: registration and records, admissions, business services. These are the folks who are going to collect the fees. They're going to help the behind-the-scenes operational aspects of an affordability program and make sure that it runs smoothly. So they need to not be forgotten when you're working on the planning, when you're working on the operations of a successful affordability program. This group, the investors, affordability is both a bottom-up and a top-down kind of endeavor. And these folks pave the way. They need to ensure that affordability it becomes part of the campus culture. And having support, both tangible and philosophical, is critical. Because, you have to commit resources. Affordability, in my view, should be an investment. It's an investment in campus success. And being that it is an investment, there has to be a physical investment of resources in order to be successful. And then finally, there's a group that I would label as influencers. I know that we've got Sarah Cohen on the call. I see Rich Hirschman is here from the National Association of College Stores. There's state national organizations, other institutions that are leading the charge in affordability. You have to keep a focus on these folks too, and they have to be a part of your planning and you're part of your process, because you can't do everything on your own. And from these groups, we get expertise and ideas on how to approach obstacles that we may not be able to deal with on our own. But this offers an opportunity for these folks to be resource multipliers. And it really has helped our efforts. And what we really try to do, and what we'd also encourage too, is that when you find a particularly strong helping hand in this is one area that I'll say, the Open Textbook Network, to find ways to invest in and also provide feedback to and from organizations like that, because you are investing, while investing in those organizations, you are investing in your own success in areas that you might not be able to directly on your own. So couple words of advice. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are a lot of folks out there, as you've already heard from the other speakers, that are doing very valuable, wonderful work in affordability, and they've got really good approaches. And really it's about trying different things, finding what fits for your university, for your students, and making the best effort of that. I would quote Sam Walton, or at least paraphrase a quote from Sam Walton, in that any good idea is worth stealing, and why reinvent a process or something that's being successful and try to start it from scratch in your world if it's already been done. I would also like to just close by leaving with you some things that I've worked in affordability for about a decade now, and there are three main things that I have seen repeatedly through the years that have kind of become stumbling blocks to successful affordability plans. The first one I would say is putting all your eggs in one basket. I would say if you're an OER advocate, plug your ears for a second, but OER, 100% OER effort may not be the best approach for your campus. If you can't provide 100% of the content through OER, then you have to think of something else that will offset that. It's not that OER is bad. It's not that inclusive access is good or bad. It's about looking at all of the options and using whatever is best for your students and your faculty. Also, I would really recommend trying not to do too much too fast. There has been a lot of talk about trying to come in one day with no affordability solution, solving it overnight, and having a fully operational program the next day. It's probably not going to work. Doing things incrementally, doing things, being able to be flexible and adjust is going to be much more beneficial in the long run. And you need a superhero. You need somebody who's going to drive this train, somebody who's going to keep this effort going even when everybody else wants to quit and they're tired of hearing it. So there needs to be somebody, if not in charge, at least directing operations, the day-to-day functions, so that things keep getting done. And really the only thing that you can do wrong, the only way to fail, is to do nothing at all. It's not us as an institution that fails. We're failing for our students, and that's really what we want to avoid. So thank you very much, and I appreciate your attention this afternoon.
Thank you, Bob. This is Jenny, everyone. So I'm going to take a few moments to thank some folks who were not on the call or weren't part of the actual presenters. We have Sarah Cohen from Open Textbook Network. She is actually on the line, and if there are any questions for her, she can answer those. But we also had a lot of help in designing the webinar, figuring out the types of information that would be helpful for people, from Amanda Herford, the Scholarly Communications Director at the Private Academic Library Network of Indiana, and from Ashley Miller, the Associate Director of Affordability and Access at The Ohio State University. So, and we also have on the line Tanya Spillaboy, the Director of Open Policy from WICHE, our sister higher ed compact. So I'm going to take a look. I'm going to open it up for questions right now. I know that why don't we start as I read through the questions and make sure that we're addressing everyone's questions. I'll go ahead and open it up to Sarah and Tanya. Sarah first and Tanya to share anything they would like to after hearing the presenters today.
Thanks so much, Jenny. This is Sarah Cohen at the Open Textbook Network, and what a terrific webinar. Thank you so much. And just to say, I don't have anything to add other than what incredible impact we're seeing from these campuses and from so many others that are taking approaches that are thoughtful, and that, as Bob, I think, I'll echo what Bob said at the end there, that really does take a diverse and long view. That, you know, a lot of people will say we're so behind in doing this work. And I would say, you know, if you're getting started, that means that you're not behind. You're doing something, and that's what this is about. And so I'm happy to answer questions, but I think you got a wonderful picture of the kind of work that is being done in the region as well as nationally. So great job to the presenters, and thanks to MHEC for organizing this.
Thanks, Sarah. Tanya, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I thought that the best part about it was learning what other people are doing in other states. And that's one of the things that we've been working on a lot with the compacts. And I really commend Jenny for pulling this together, because sometimes it's just good to know what other people are doing so you don't have to start from square one and invent something yourself if it's already being done somewhere else. And thank you to all the presenters for sharing what you're doing on your campuses and in your systems.
Thank you, Tanya. Well, I'm looking. Folks didn't have too many questions. I'm going to assume that it was because of the thoroughness and the richness of our presentation. It could also be that they're a little overwhelmed if they're just getting started with these things. So anyone out there who does have questions in the next few days, feel free to contact me with them, and I'll try to connect you with the folks who can answer them. I would say most of the questions today have been posed by Rich Hirschman, and I know Marcos Rivera has been responding to him. Marcos, would you mind spending just a minute or two addressing some of the questions that and some of the comments that Rich has made?
Yeah, sure. So the first question that I think came through was a question about, or more a comment about the graph that we provided in terms of our access of cost to students and taking a look at the options of textbooks. And so Rich's comment was talking about or mentioned that print could be cheaper than digital depending on how students are purchasing or where students are purchasing. I think that's a great observation. Yes, print can be cheaper than digital depending on how students and where students are purchasing textbooks. For us, you know, I would argue that new traditional print textbooks may be the most costly and highly restrictive compared to all the other options. We could have included a number of different options on the graph. As Jenny kind of started the webinar talking about, there's a number of different options that can get a little murky, or there's a lot of things to consider in the marketplace. This was just a snapshot, and you can certainly add other options on there. We gave a brief overview of some of the most popular options, and yeah, you could definitely add more if you wanted to or needed to.
Jenny, this is Gwen. I'd like to add something to that. We're starting to see across our consortium a shift in some surprising institutions to serving what they call new traditional students, which are online, non-residential, often not in the same state. So, for example, Eastern Gateway Community College just got an award from New York State to be their best online course provider, which was very odd. But what they have said, or we have Franklin University, which is very military friendly, that any first day digital model, and that includes OER, of course, which can be provided first day free of cost, but inclusive access really helps those students, because getting the right textbook, if they're thrown on the open market and they're trying to get it from Amazon, or if they're in a different country, the ISBNs don't necessarily match up, that for those students, print is often, it's not just a cost issue, it's a right textbook on the first day of class issue. And those are some of the affordances of both OER and inclusive access.
Thanks, Gwen. That's a really important point. Yes, we know that affordability, the actual cost, is only a small piece of the pie in making things more accessible and affordable for students and increasing their learning outcomes. I wish we could keep talking. We do have a couple of questions I'm going to invite people to send to me via email, and I will get our presenters to address them. It is past our 2 o'clock end time. I thank you all for joining us. The slides will be coming to you along with an assessment. Please fill that out and let us know how we're doing. And look for another webinar in a few months. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.